Oh god, okay, this is the third time doing this video, so forgive me if I seem a little miffed. Alright, audio issue is not happening, so that's awesome. Alright, so today we are talking about edema and why it is potentially the killer of gains. But before I get into it, in the description below you will find BD's Big Book of Length. Essentially, it is the past year's worth of length knowledge that I have developed. So I've taken physiotherapy research, applied it to the penis to make much safer and more effective penis elongation routines. Doing the same thing for girth right now, except it is much more complex, and hence why it's taking me much longer. So if you're struggling to keep up with all my content on length, that will make your life much easier. Now that's out of the way. Let's talk about edema, swelling, and all the other fun stuff associated with it. So first we need to talk about the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system is essentially the opposite of the cardiovascular system. Your cardiovascular system supplies nutrients and oxygen to your cells and tissues. The lymphatic system cleans up the waste left behind by your cells and whatever is left over as the byproduct of nutrient delivery. Your cardiovascular system is actually not very efficient with water. Your lymphatic system retains most of the water lost by the cardiovascular system. Basically, wherever the cardiovascular system is, the lymphatic system is right there beside it. So that means it is in the penis. Granted, it may not be nearly as dense as in some other areas in the body, but for the grand scheme of things, it's there and it does impact penis expansion. The lymphatic system itself is relatively low pressure. So I've seen research that it sits at about 15 millimeters of mercury in pressure, which would be like less than half an inch for us Americans. And since we talk about inches of mercury, I'm going to talk about it in inches from now on. But Hank pointed out to me that it can actually go up to about 4 inches Hg, inches of mercury, but that's like in small burst. Its normal operating pressure is relatively low. Unlike the penis and the cardiovascular system, which has much more variable but much higher pressure in general. For us, during the erection, we will see a pressure event from anywhere from 4 Hg all the way up to 10 Hg. If we need to work beyond 4 Hg to see any kind of overexpansion, that means the lymphatic system will be going into back channel, being pulled into the penis. So if we're not careful, we can cause the lymphatic system to overexpand faster than the blood holding tissues. Also, there is something called interstitial fluid, and that is all the water inside your body that just kind of coats everything. It is very low pressure, and it makes it very easy for it to get pulled into a vacuum. So if we leave a vacuum on, even at exceptionally low pressures, we can build up a lot of interstitial fluid in a certain area. So low pressure pumping does not train the penis, it trains the lymphatic system. But at the same time, if we go overboard with this pressure, we can just build up a lot of lymph quickly. So we need to find the balance. And then there are a few other things, but let's get into back like in the old days and still today with fetish pumpers. You would see a lot of guys get these massive pumps from training their lymphatic system so much. So we're talking like an inch and a half of girth per session. But what's really happening is they just cause their lymphatic channels to like grow 10 to 20x the original size. And they can hold just a lot more fluid. And since it is such a slow, relatively passive transfer of liquids, it takes a while for that lymph to drain out of the penis. And that could be anywhere from 6 hours to 3 days, depending on how slow their lymphatic system is. So when you hear guys like, yeah, pumping doesn't work, I get big for a couple days, but then it all goes away, is because they've trained their lymphatic system to that point. If we're trying to limit edema, what do we need to do? Let's think about this logically first. If we know the penis needs to be in an overexpanded state to grow the blood holding tissues, but we need to limit the amount of lymphatic buildup, we need to go to a high pressure that does not overexert the rate of expansion of the penis. So we can't be doing exceptionally high pressures. I believe our recommendations are 5 to 10 Hg on r/getting bigger. I would never go above 12 Hg because all you're doing is just pulling in a lot of interstitial fluid and lymph into the penis at that high of pressure. Second, when the penis is stagnant, or actually let's talk about the collagen part of it first. So if you follow along with the Lang stuff for the past year, you know the tunica albuginea is a stiff connective tissue that is responsible for the stiffness of the erection and the overall shape of your shaft. That requires specific work for it to elongate and stretch. All girth training is getting it to stretch the other direction. So if we have issues stretching outwards, the lymph system, and more importantly, the interstitial fluid under the skin is going to come in and fill that area. So if our tunica albuginea is not properly prepped, we are never going to see proper expansion of the corpus cavernosum to actually cause erect tissue size changes. So that's why we've been applying some physiotherapy techniques such as tunica scraping and pressure point massage, BFR massage is what I call it, to prime the tunica to expand, because when it's relaxed, that's when we can push it out more and more. Additionally, the more often you apply pressure to a collagenous tissue or load, the longer and more fatigued it gets. Longer, in our case, is going to make it like a longer rubber band going around the penis. So the more sets we do in our session, the more fatigue we generate, the easier it is to get the stiff tunica albuginea to expand. And that's what's going to allow for the blood holding tissue to then expand. Now, the tunica albuginea probably has some practical limits on how much it can expand. The research shows you need to get beyond 2% strain, or fatigue is what I call it. So after your session, you need to be about 2% longer for length. For girth, we need to account for first lymphatic buildup. And then, since we are probably going to be measuring with a cock ring afterwards, we're probably going to be anywhere from 6 to 8% bigger, since we're going to be able to have a supernatural erection with the added lymph and the added pressure from the cock ring. So that's how we're going to be measuring our progress. And you want to be about 6 to 8% bigger. So just making it simple, since I do this numbers all the time, I'm 6 inches mid shaft. I want to be about 6 1/3 to 6 1/4 after my session, to be about 6 to 8% thicker temporarily. Now, another sign that you overdid it is with how the loss of vascularity. So if you lose a lot of veinage after your session and you're like very smooth and kind of puffy, clear sign of overwork, or you did not use the proper pressures, etc. You want to have a lot of vascularity. It kind of wants to look like a muscle pump. So you're going to have some veinage in your penis, but you're also going to have a bit of fluff under the skin because you pulled in more liquid. It's part of the game, but you don't want it to be excessive liquid. Now, in my experience, tunica release methods for 5 to 10 minutes beforehand. So I'm doing scraping and BFR massage right now. There's a few other things that you guys can try. And then about 20 minutes of interval pumping, so 10 sets, 2 minutes each, it gets me to 6% expansion after my session. Now, some of you guys are going to be tempted to go for longer because we're taught more is more in most cases, but that's not what we want to do. Since we know there's a practical limit to the tunica albuginea expansion, anything more than 6 to 8% expansion is just going to lead to lymphatic system growth and then interstitial fluid rushing to fill the vacuum instead of the blood in your penis. So that's literally like been the gist of my entire teaching this year. Less is more. And then another thing before I wrap this up is that as I get closer and closer to like when I need to take a break, edema comes in much faster. Now, I've been doing this every other day, but say about 3 weeks in to 4 weeks into a training block, I will see edema come in much faster. And what I'm thinking is that I've developed so much cumulative fatigue that the corpus cavernosum or the tunica albuginea can no longer expand beyond that rate. And then that's when the edema really starts to come into overdrive. So if you start getting a lot of edema quickly, you take a week off, let your body heal, and then you can get back to causing the positive changes in size that we so desire. Okay, I am praying I do not have any audio issues this time. Again, check out the link in the description and the pinned comment to find my book on length if that's what you so desire. Girth book's probably going to be out in the next month or so. Don't quote me on that though. And then if you're looking for some high quality supplementation, check out LeviathanSups.com and Leviathan Wellness on Amazon. This is BD signing off. If I can get to the camera, that is.